or changed. All right. Okay, I see we are now streaming. I'll pull up our agenda for today. We don't have anything on there yet. Anything that anyone wants to add? I can add a couple.
I just made a quick PR that should speed up the stats stuff. But specifically just because the recommendation I gave you last week was, in hindsight, that was like, this is going slower than I thought it should, and so I was like, okay, I should probably just switch to the faster thing anyway.
The PDF stats.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Is it the form fixer, the PR, or is it in the?
Yes, I just opened it at the beginning of the admin meeting.
Okay.
And it's not super long, but I could just walk you through it to explain the reasoning behind it.
Sure. Okay, that sounds good. And I guess similarly, since we're live, I could just do a quick check on your suggestion about my PR to the Weaver.
Yeah.
Anything? I want to talk about this again. It just keeps rearing its head. That how long it takes to assemble documents.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a good answer for it. I think maybe it's just that I have to sit down and try to fix it for a while, but I guess see if we can break it down into more manageable pieces maybe we can start to do that a little bit today. Anything else that anybody wants to talk about code-wise?
I don't think so. Not right now.
Okay. Is it all right if I just, Bryce, since you already have context for this Weaver PR, maybe we can just go over the changes I made and then maybe merge it if it looks good. Okay, so essentially, this is what we had noticed, Michelle, is that we have this check when you run a form through the Weaver that was catching if you used any reserved words. And we had reserved words, meaning anything that means something already in docassemble, in Python, or in the assembly line framework. So the problem was that I had found some valid reasons to use those words in a docx file, although not in a PDF. Because in a docx file, you can have logic in the actual template. That means there's times that you can use reserved keywords and you want them to display. You're not trying to ask a question to fill them in. Whereas in a PDF, anything that's listed as the name of a field is intended to be a variable name. We can safely exclude them there. Does that make sense? So I can.
Yep.
Okay. So the first version of the PR, I just said, okay, let's just warn people when they have anything that's a reserved word of any kind and not stop them from processing it if it's a docx file. I think Bryce pointed out, well, there's still maybe some things that are always going to be errors. And I think I'm not sure that we will know what those are in advance, but I think there are some things which we can catch for sure, which are just, I think really just the reserved Python keywords and reserved identifiers, built-in identifiers, because those will actually, Python keywords like for, in, try, except, those will actually cause a syntax error. Those will never be valid to be used as a variable name or in a place where we're currently catching a variable name. Built-ins, I think we really don't want people to use built-ins either. Some of the other ones, I'm like, well, maybe is there a good reason? Like, an example is like we have I, which represents whether it's the final or preview version of the document. Obviously, people use that in an if statement to like show or hide conditional text inside the preview versus the final version of the docx file. But maybe even they wanted to use it to show a watermark that says final or preview somewhere, right? Maybe they wanted to literally just insert the exact literal value of it.
Yeah, that seems a bit fragile.
I'm not saying that it's
hard to parse.
Yeah, it may be hard for us to know when people are doing something clever versus something that we don't want to let them do at all. But what I did is I just said like, hey, we're going to have two categories. Right now, all I put in that bucket of things you can never ever use in the docx is the Python keywords and identifier, built-in identifiers. So I just added in a separate check for that. And one of the other things I had to do, so that one will cause an error. This one won't cause an error, I'll just give a warning.
If you give that to us as documents to use to test, they can be added to Kiln tests, by the way.
Well, I put unit tests in for them,
Oh, sure. Okay.
at least for this one here. I was trying to decide a unit test for the other one would probably be worth adding too, I guess. So what do folks think about that distinction between those two? Is that a good place for us to start with this for now, at least?
I was trying to read through for the comment you had made about classes and functions and stuff. Where did that end up on these two lists? Because
So I'm leaving classes and functions where they are. So they're not going to be caught as errors. They're going to just be warnings.
there weren't. Okay, so
Yeah.
it's just Python things that are errors.
Yeah. Well, here's the main reason why. I might have actually added them in here, but the main reason I didn't is because, let's see. Here's what we're getting, right? We have a list of strings.
Yeah.
So I guess I could exec them and then try to figure out what they are. Just felt like
Well,
a little
I
bit
was-
hacky.
And a
but-
try catch or something, so that it doesn't cause a name
I guess it's just
exception.
just seemed like a bigger PR than bigger task.
okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. I wasn't. I think I mentioned a few times that this doesn't have to be this PR, but I do think it's something we should consider. So that's fair. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
And I'm okay with adding the classes and functions because it's probably almost always an accident. But I
I'm
was
happy-
thinking
yeah.
of reasons why you might have a reference to a function or a variable name without calling the function. Or sorry, function or
Okay,
class. And there are some existing
Well,
classes that we pass a lambda to make them work. Like in the, there are,
what do you mean? I'm not sure. I don't I'm not sure what you're talking about. Is what I'm saying.
okay. So
By
sometimes
pass a
there's
class.
sometimes there's a parameter that would be a function, which in the, I think it's like the exhibit class stuff.
Mhm.
Like higher order
labeling.
functions, callbacks, that type of thing.
They're not
Sure,
callbacks
yeah.
in this case, but that's the same concept. Yeah, where you pass a function as a parameter. Yes.
Oh, okay, but it's the addendum stuff.
The addendum stuff and the exhibit stuff.
What? Okay.
So for the exhibit stuff, we have a exhibit cover sheet, and there's lots of different ways someone might want to number those. Sometimes people use letters, sometimes they use numbers, sometimes they want to use I. And there's different rules in different jurisdictions for how you're supposed to format the cover page for exhibits.
Yeah.
So that was why I made that a function people could pass.
That makes sense. I mostly just keep thinking. I can't place who exactly it was, but I feel like the one time that this has caught things has been the issue of what was it? Explain, the really common thing that I think Jonathan ended up taking out at your suggestion, but it was that was an issue of that's a function name, and so you'll just get the function address instead of the thing you expected it to be. Where it's possible for that to happen, and so I think that's maybe. And I guess we would need to, maybe what this leads more towards is doing smarter things than just what are all of the variables that are used in Jinja templates. Like we can look at control blocks and just not touch control blocks. I agree. There are a lot of places that if you're just doing essentially Python code, then we don't really need to be filtering out a lot of those things. But if it's the whatever the display insert block is in Jinja, if you just have like a single variable there and like we gather those, and if that's a function or a class or anything else that's bad, yeah, just don't do that. But if it's like evaluating code or something, then sure, yeah, that's fine. Or if it's going through like a Jinja filter, like, yeah, we're not going to be able to, like, we're not going to limit what you could possibly do, even if it's a weird thing that might not be maintainable. Like, we shouldn't really limit what they do. But if it's something that is, this is going to be wrong, and like not just like crash wrong, but like will display the address of this function in memory wrong. Like, that's something you're not going to want to, no one's ever going to want to do in a thing like this. And they shouldn't have to really think about that if it does happen. So that's mostly what I think like is the ultimate, what I'm trying to get towards of like that one particular case. And maybe it's definitely not, I agree. It's definitely not for this PR. And maybe what it's working towards is doing smarter things with Jinja templates than we currently are.
That was another thing that I was looking at. I was like, wait, my list isn't working. Why is that? Because we had been filtering out anything that was a Python keyword here. So we were never catching Python keywords when they were being used as variable names when we parse the docx. But I think this is still right. I don't know if I have any other good test files that might be using Python keywords in a place where, I don't really know. I'm assuming that this isn't going to cause any problems because we certainly have, I've run it with some templates that use like for statements and stuff, but hopefully this is okay for us to remove that limit. We won't have any false positives now.
Hopefully.
If anyone has any docx files that are more complicated, I was trying to go through the code that I had pulled to my computer already, but there weren't any like great docx templates that I could try.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like the most
I
complex
don't
one.
have them either.
Yeah, I was gonna say the most complex one off the top of my head is the addendum one that I was like just looking through recently to help Emily with some stuff. I was like, oh yeah, this is fairly complicated.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's actually a good idea. We'll try that.
But I think in general, linter can be a really great tool. I find that as long as they're flexible, right? When they just won't let you, but you have the option to continue anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so that's where we started, and Bryce is suggesting that we actually have a hard stop for more of this categories.
That's my thing is, like,
okay.
I don't know. Maybe we just need more. Maybe I need to observe more people using the Weaver. But like, I feel like when people like, if they from like working with students and like working with the partners, my understanding is people either do one of two things when it's something they don't understand. Is they'll stop and ask us, which is fine. Like what they should do if they come across like a warning screen that's like, oh, did you actually intend to do this? And they're like, maybe I didn't. Or they'll just keep going and sort of ignore it. Like, and so I'm afraid that more people will end up doing I don't know how many, I feel like more people would end up doing the latter and just keep going, and like the warning screen won't really be useful, and especially if they don't understand it, then they won't remember it when it comes time to like, oh, this thing is breaking something. Sorry, you were saying something.
Well, I was hoping that like if they do run into an error, they might think, hey.
Yeah, that's the thing, but I don't know if it's how much they understand. We throw a lot of info at them in the Weaver, and we can't avoid it, but like I don't quite know how much is maintained, retained. So
a little flag on it. Let's see.
That's fair enough.
Oh, I forget you can do that. That part, just in general.
Well, the CSS is still wonky on it.
Oh yeah,
it's part of it. Okay. think this is the one I usually use.
That's a good one. I was laughing at the idea of throwing an engine warning.
I think there's just a little bit too. What about that? So like a little bit more. Let's see what it looks like.
Could we just add a thing at the top that says this may cause an error in your interview?
But it won't actually cause an error. So I was thinking about that.
Yeah, it's either going to cause an error or it's just it'll cause the template to be wrong possibly and have errored values, but I don't think it will. Not all the time it would cause an error. Like that's we are filtering out the Python expressions that will cause an error. I think is what.
That's what the latest experiment that I just did. And then we're not. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We're not catching parameters right now. So like I mean, there's some like anti-patterns, right? Like here's the thing that I caught at first. This was the template. It has. So maybe. Yeah, okay. If I is equal to final. So if I had written it like this instead, even though it still uses I, it wouldn't have caused an error because it doesn't catch the I as a parameter name, only when it's the full identifier here. So, which is, you know, it'd be nice to catch parameters because those can cause errors just as much as other things. But we're not doing that now. Then but let's say we did have this. Like I really wouldn't want this warning to show. Where is it? Here. That warning would be like scary for no reason when someone's actually correctly using. Oh, why did it not?
Well, because
did you save it?
Maybe if I saved it, but
yeah.
Well, anyway, I wouldn't want it to show when someone's using I in the right way. That's my point. But I think that's okay. That's a later thing.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a struggle with linters.
We don't have a sophisticated parser yet.
Yeah. I think we'll have to wait to do anything fancy. Or
regexes just
catch everything.
Are just not parsers, so we would need to like just totally different way.
They are not indeed.
Okay. But for now, does this like extra strong warning seem good to people?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
All right.
Yeah, I think we could quibble on simpler language, but we don't have to.
This is the key here, right? So like no one's ever going to be overwriting the value unexpectedly. It's just about the display. And the display, as Bryce said, might have like a function signature if they're using the wrong thing. But you won't be overwriting the value of something that DocAssemble needs at least. It's a bit safer.
Mhm. Do we want to send ourselves a note when this happens in someone's interview? In when someone's running through the Weaver, so we get a sense of how often this is happening?
Hmm.
We don't quite have that in yet. I like the idea, and it's a thing that we should maybe consider doing more. But I don't know the best way, like the best process for it, essentially, since the process isn't there, and I think that's the harder part.
Okay.
I do
Okay,
worry
yeah.
about like it leaking people's information in a way that they don't expect. But obviously, only our internal staff should be using this server. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like I would treat it kind of how we treat the email warnings to like that happen on production whenever anything airs, and it would be something similar, but it would be a good, I think, in my opinion, a really good extension of that. So we can be like, oh, this is how this goes, or this is how someone like this person is using it. Not even this person. This is just like how it's getting used and what it's catching. So
Okay.
okay. All right. So I think we're good with this then. Do you want to look at it one more time?
if that was to me,
Yeah.
probably, I guess.
Okay.
I'm assuming that I'll go through it quickly. I don't think it'll be, there's a lot that's actually changed. So
No, something is wrong. Let's see. My error.
Doesn't let you add to general sequences, only to lists.
This is it here, 115.
I think I had fixed this at some point. I don't remember what I did.
Here.
I don't remember what I did with that branch.
Probably because I've already added it to a list. So you just probably moved the order.
Maybe, yeah.
Let's see.
No, actually, I didn't make a change for that one. Looks fine.
Yep.
The errors are all for libraries you can't find.
Okay. Well, I'll still allow you to review it one more time. I'll just request it. You request it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I wonder if there's a way for us to make that happen without creating a PR every time. It just is really clutters our
The black stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of trust it just to do it on its own. I know we can't use like pre-commit hooks when people push from the playground, but I guess I could do that locally. I'm just too lazy to set that up for now. But
yeah, same.
Well, you wouldn't want it when the PR, you wouldn't want it put on an existing PR because that like interferes with someone then continuing to edit the same PR, or that's what I found.
Yeah, that is something that gets in the way.
one thing we could do is just make the author accept it, and I mean, it will keep piling up the PRs, which is a bit annoying. Like if you have to see which is the latest one, if they continue to not be formatted right. But if you are the person who authored the PR and you see the black PR come in, you should merge it and then pull to your playground. And then you won't have that problem with the
That's
font.
fair. Does it put a note on the existing PR that like there's been a PR made on this branch, or
I
is
think
it
it, I
separate?
think it references it. Yeah,
Okay.
you can
It
double
should
check.
show up as the commit for sure. So you would see this with the little art.
Well, no, before like when
But does it reference this PR and say, hey, this is for this PR, and then someone knows to go look for it, or do they have to just go looking for it?
it should. I don't know why it's not actually. Oh, because it only does it per commit. I thought it did. I assumed it did, but I guess I get notifications for general PRs being opened. Do we get? We might be able to change that text, and we with some finagling might be able to reference the PR because that's all we would need to do. I don't know if we could set it up so you could get notifications for it, but we could definitely set up on the main PR itself. There would be like someone mentioned this PR and another PR, and it would be linked right there. I think that might be the best we could do,
That might help.
and it would happen it happens really quickly. It happens like a minute or two after like you first open the PR.
I suspect we'll still end up with like tangled situations, but
It
Yeah,
hasn't been a problem for me, but I'm usually the one who just jumps on those and merges them right away because it's like, oh, it's not changing the code.
yeah.
But because if you're using the command line, which as I found like I've started to do a lot more, it just is a lot better workflow than trying to push from the playground. Then
it's
you
mostly
won't
because
accept it.
the playground could be better.
Yeah, the playground
add,
could be
but-
improved. You're definitely right. Like it could be.
Would love if I had a month to put an actual like get UI and the playground separate page. You get to look at your merges, or you get to look at what's wrong. Get to look at merge conflicts. What's the diff? And you can just say yes. Oh, I don't know. There's ways to do it, but
There are ways
that
to
would-
improve it.
that
But
would
on
take
the
a
other
while.
hand, it's like there's a really mature ecosystem on the command line. So now that I have the DA install and can use that, it's like, oh, it's better.
no, yeah. For us, we can just use the command line. But
But you're right. There's a lot of people who wouldn't do that.
either way, it's definitely ahead of scope for
Yes.
the one thing.
Okay, let me just make sure this is still running because the kiln test is failing. I'm assuming it's a timeout.
It's usually a timeout.
Sorry, though. I don't have to do that. And just because my screen is being shared, I'm sorry, I don't need to distract everybody else. So the form fixer, let's take a look at that. PR.
I think. Let me make sure I clicked yes on the PR. I did not click yes on the PR.
All right.
Okay, refresh the page. I typed everything out and I did not click make PR. Oh, that was why, because I think there was a MyPy thing that I will figure out. But the main thing was that it was so. It was taking a while. Like I think I checked. I have also had I set up a way to do like actual profiling for all of DocAssemble and not just like in interviews, which I had at one point made and I didn't like it. But essentially now I can like go through and like start profiling, do whatever I want to do on the DocAssemble server, and then it will like give me the dump of everything, like the whole profile that you need. And it was like 18 seconds total. 10 seconds were name reformatting or renaming, and 8 seconds were the Monte Carlo stuff, which I don't think it should have taken 8 seconds.
Okay.
And I think that's definitely just because I told you the naive way of doing it instead of the NumPy way of doing it. And so all I've changed is that instead of calling the function once and getting one sample back you say, hey, give me X samples or N samples, and it just gives you all of those at once.
Like one array with all of them.
Yeah. And that's where NumPy is very fast of just giving you a large number of things at once. So.
Okay.
And then each array is just this field, like sampled each time. So you still do the same. You just add all of those arrays up.
Got it. So we're just having one big array with all the times and then take the mean.
Mhm.
Is that right?
Well, no, it's one big array. Well, okay, no, yeah, that's right. One big array. Each item in the array is a sample of like this run took this long.
Of the whole run.
Of the whole
Not
run.
just for one. Not just for one field.
No, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, whereas before we were making the array of here's the whole run for each field, and now it's just each element is here's one whole run, and you're adding each field to that incrementally. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see. What you're saying makes sense as a way to do it. Let's just take a look at the.
Yeah, making
Hard to see it in there.
That's fair. And I hadn't checked how long it takes on the server to see if it's any faster, but I did do it. Locally it took like 8 seconds to do the whole thing, and it cut down to like 4 seconds. So I'm assuming it cut the amount of time that it takes on the server probably roughly in half, maybe a bit less. But
okay. So here we have the time to answer field for one field, and we're returning a lambda where we get a number of samples for that field. Okay.
mm-hmm.
All right. And then time to answer form is going to be it's an array of arrays, or is it one?
It's one dimensional array.
So when we get the mean, is it going to be the mean of all of the times to answer for each field? Would be in one flat list?
No. Okay, so it's in like essentially the final array is the exact same. It should be the exact same of like the final MP array, and the earlier was each element in the list is just the interview took this long to take, the interview took this long to take, etc. for like in samples. And so that final thing is exactly the same. It's just we've sort of flipped it, whereas instead of okay, let's generate how long it took this time, like this run through and sum it all up, and that's one element. And now let's do the same for the next element, and we're slowly adding things. We're doing it field by field and saying here's like 2,000 samples of how long it took for someone to fill in this particular field, and then we do the same for the next field, and then we add those two arrays together, and then we do the same thing for the next field, and we add that to the main array.
So now it basically leaves the burden on NumPy to do those loops of operations, and it does a better job of it.
Yes, yeah, it does a better job of it because it can do it instead of because there's no good way to be like I want to make an array of 2,000 things long, and then like you have to jump back out to the Python to then okay, I want to run another run of all of these things, and it does some stuff in Python, and most of it in Python instead of NumPy. Whereas now we just say, hey NumPy, give me 2,000 samples of this field, and it sums back, and then hey NumPy, give me another 2,000 or give me 2,000 samples of this other field, and then we sum it again.
Okay. So this times to answer is going to be for one field. Okay, so let's say it's going to be like field 1, 10. right? Field 2, 100, whatever it is going to be.
Times answer is still it's the probably shouldn't be called times answer. It's not times. It's the function now. It has been the function. It was the function before. Maybe I'll rename that.
Yeah. Okay. Right. It's no longer a set of times or a list of times. It's a callable here. Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out like where's the resolution of the form? Because we want to do I feel like we might be averaging the wrong thing. Am I totally wrong? I'm just trying to make sure I can understand it. So just trying to write it out here. Field, put this in. So don't get distracted by the syntax errors. Okay, so we have a.
So I was going to say what's
we
happening.
Have this like field 1, 10, field 1, 100, field 1, 1.2. Right,
exactly. Yes. Yeah. And
that
would
at the
be
end we have this, don't we? Like field 2. Field 2. Isn't this what we would have? Wouldn't that be the contents of NP array?
No, NP array, it's an element-wise sum. And so you would be taking field 1, like field 1, this sample, field 1, this sample, field 1, this sample, and you would add field 2, the first sample, to field 1, the first sample, and then field 2, the second sample, to field 2, the second sample. So after adding it, you would have field 1 plus field 2 is something. Field 1 plus field 2 is
110.
And then by the end of it, you get field 1 plus field 2 plus all of the fields took this long. Field 1 plus field 2, all of the fields took this long. That's what you'd have at the end. It should still be the same.
So you'd have like all fields colon 110.
Exactly.
All fields sample 1, 110, sample 2, 109, sample 3.
Yes, yeah.
101.
Okay, so it's an array of it is an array of arrays. NP array is an array of arrays.
No, it's just one array.
So the array does look like this.
Yes.
So
and we're not
array.mean give you what you're describing. Wouldn't be the mean of
like
all of the values. I know I'm making it a dictionary just so I can see the association of the different things.
So, okay, yeah, it is. Well, it's the mean for all of the values for the whole interview. It's not the mean of like this one field or something, or like these few fields, which it's the same thing that we should be getting out previously of like the mean over all of these different runs of the whole interview. Took this long.
So I guess this, I suppose it is the same. Algebraically, I guess it's the same thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is we're adding up all of the random times for every individual field. We're doing it all in one go. And then we're saying, what's the mean of all of those times?
Yes.
But is there any case in which that would be different from what we were doing before? Before we were getting a total for each run of the form and then getting the mean of all of the runs of the total for the form. Would it be possible to exclude some of the fields somehow in the... I'm probably wrong, but just...
Yeah, I think maybe I don't know if it would help. So what's really the main thing that's happening is like conceptually there's two for loops. There's one for loop that's going over each number of samples that we want, and there's one for loop that's going over every field in the interview. Right. And whereas before we were, for each sample, for everything in the interview, sum all of that stuff up in the interview, or each field from the interview, sum the time that it took, and now we have in like how long it took to get that run through that interview, and then you keep doing it. All this really does, like conceptually, is just reverse those for loops. So instead of now, so now it's just for every field, we go through this many samples, generate a sample for that field. But we don't want to add, we aren't adding all of those up yet, but we keep them in one really long array. And then we go through the next field and we generate all of the samples we want for that field, and then we sum it to the same array. So really, we get the same result. It's just sort of flipping the for loops that lets NumPy go much, much quicker.
And I guess because we're using the mean, it's the same. But if we were doing the median, what I'm thinking is like, would that be influenced by the order of the fields appeared on the form, or the number of really short fields? Because the median would be different, obviously, than the mean. But
well, okay, so the thing that we're NP array, like the final item NP array that we're calling mean and like standard deviation and median for and all that stuff, that should be exactly the same as it was before. We're making it in a different way, but it should be the exact same values, like given an initial seed. And I can do some some quick checks to like confirm that that's the case. If that would help, but that is the same.
Yeah, no,
So
it might help me just to help me understand it. I do trust you though. Right.
That's fine. Yeah, no, I can do some stuff like that. Just confirming and being like, oh yeah, I ran it on this, like before this commit, did this form. I'll start to have the same initial starting seed or whatever, and show that you get the same values out. So
okay,
can do.
All right. All right, thanks. All right, so let me see. I don't know how far we could really get on this, but basically, every time someone's like, hey, I have this long template, or I have 6 templates, and tries to assemble them, our current code falls down because it can't handle that. And I'm trying to think if there's anything we can do to move that forward. It's just an open issue we've had for a very long time that is not resolved.
Yeah.
I don't know what we could do to help resolve it a bit more. In this column, maybe there's not really a lot. I don't know. Let's see.
I thought we had some concrete things to do.
I mean, we've probably already done this, I don't remember, but if there are places where we're compiling the PDF multiple times, we could add a flag that goes, this has been compiled already. You don't need to recompile it.
Yeah, I think we've hit the limit of those fixes. So
okay,
we have this caching that happens. So when the screen loads, it runs everything multiple times. So we're not regenerating the template every time the screen does its thing anymore. It's cached for the life of that
the screen
load. But every time you refresh, it will regenerate it, which I feel like is probably the right choice, because the only other way to force the template to regenerate requires people to put special logic in other places in their interview, which we can't control. So I think it's the right place for us to intervene and say, hey, we're going to redo this for you every time so that you don't have to worry about triggering an update of the cached PDF.
And we've already looked to see how Jonathan does his PDF compilation, which was quicker the last time I checked on stuff.
He's improved it. I was looking through some of these older issues,
but like, could we directly copy what he's doing and do the same thing? Like when he does attachments on the page, right? In an attachments block or an attachments specifier for the page.
Right. So that was a problem with the first version of our code. Okay. I think we've fixed it, but
so something that would time out on Kiln would also time out with Jonathan's version of the code. On the things
leaving Kiln out of it, like I would say, I think we're about the same, but maybe we should reprofile that. I don't know, to see if there's more low-hanging fruit. But I think the problem is, like, no matter what, like, let's say we get the generation per PDF to 1 second. We still only have some limited amount of time. I think it's 30 seconds to do that. So if you have 30 PDFs or the equivalent of 30 PDFs because of the length of the files, you'll still create a timeout at some point. So we've kind of pushed things down so that they happen faster than they started. Maybe there's still more room we can make there, but it's never going to be 0.
Yeah.
There's always some size of things people will try to do with our tool that won't work.
Right.
It's still slow.
Or with Jonathan's, whichever one.
So I'm confused by what you mean by Jonathan's thing versus Killen's thing. What's happened?
So at
What is
some
Killen doing
point,
differently?
I don't know. Like that's the kind of stuff that I'm not familiar with. But I know that at some point I tested the difference between ours and between just putting attachments on the page as opposed to the document that we were doing, the downloadable documents we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And attachments, Jonathan's code was much faster.
Oh, well, ours uses attachments most of the time. And we're doing a whole bunch of extra stuff on top of that, aren't we?
No.
That's what-
Attachments on the page. So that section that appears at the bottom when you usually do doc assemble, where you can go from like download, email, whatever, and it just has a list of your attachments.
I see.
So Jonathan's UI for that. When you put that up, not an attachments block, but attachments specifier on a regular questions page.
Gotcha.
Okay, I was going to try to like mock something, but I think, I know what Michelle, what you're talking about, because I remember us thinking like,
Discussing
hey,
that.
why is ours so much slower? But I think we've gotten past that by doing the caching and also by reducing the number of repetitions. There's probably a little bit of extra overhead still, but I don't think it's significant anymore. It's fairly close to the same time. If that's
Yeah.
wrong, we still have some low-hanging fruit maybe we could fix. But I think the biggest issue is
That any amount of
happens.
time is going to take
too much for some
for
size.
some people.
Right.
So like what is a general solution for doc assemble in general, though we're implementing it for ourselves?
Well, there is a solution in DocAssemble, which is just to do background assembly. It's a minimum of 10 seconds to do background assembly. Well, I think I think it's a minimum because it won't refresh the screen before the 10 seconds have passed.
Maybe it
Because
might be 6, but it's usually 10, I think. By default, it might be set to 10.
6 might be the shortest he recommends. That might be what it is. So like that's fine. But also then you're stuck with, hey, I generated this in the background and now it's the cached version. How do you tell it, oh, I actually want to refresh it in a UI that makes sense to people anyway? You could have a refresh button. I mean, that's what occurred to me as I said that. But, so, I mean, it's not that we don't have a solution general. I think it really has to be specific to ours. Like we want to let people have the newest version of the document on the screen when they click to download it, at least. I kind of think we could cheat a little bit because it takes people a little time to read the screen. So like, I don't think it has to be ready at page load. It has to be ready when they click the link.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has to be compatible with other things we do with the PDF, like emailing. Somebody's phone is ringing. I don't not necessarily, but no one has my number anyway, my office. So that's the problem. Like I said, I don't really know how to move it forward here without just saying, okay, I want to just reduce this. I'm just doing a unit on Agile with my students. I was like, I'm going to reduce the size of the unit of work so that it's actionable. I'd like to be able to say, hey, next week, I'm going to do this much on this and have made some progress on it. But right now, it's too big for me to know where to start.
Has this been a conversation with Jonathan at all or he's just said background task?
He's just said background task, I think.
That's pretty much what I understand about it. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel there's not a good break this down into smaller features that we can then merge and like do it slowly like that. But I do think that we could break it down into smaller milestones. So actually do this like background task suggested thing on a like in a not like we do it through the Weaver now, but like put something through the Weaver and then we manually edit like the Weaver code to try and add this to it. What does it look like? Can we get it to work? And once we have something that's like there, like here's a test package somewhere, I honestly think we just need to sort of like hit it with a hammer a bunch and make sure that like, yes, this does work. It will refresh when we tell it to. It won't randomly decide to crash or hang infinitely. Not hang infinitely, but like the PDF never returns, or oh, there was some weird error on the background task side that made it seem like it was constantly like generating forever. Like the doc symbol, the browser function doesn't know that it was actually completed, or there was some error or something like that. And having all of those caveats. If we can get a minimum Morgan example from there, then we have a good idea of what the code should look like. And then it's just a matter of, okay, generate this code in the Weaver. Which I think is what we'll have to do, right? Like it's going to have to be a new Weaver only things, and there's no easy way to silently add this to existing interviews, really.
I don't really know. I mean, it would have to, if we did that, it would probably change something, like maybe the way that the Kiln tests work, at least.
Mhm.
So like here's two bifurcating approaches. One is we don't generate the document until someone clicks the link to download it. So at least it's a per document timeout. And I guess we can combine this with a background task so that when someone clicks the link, they get, I don't know, probably a spinner that pops up and says, hey, your document's being created, please wait. So they don't
Isn't this a problem for the preview as well, though?
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Preview's worse because we generally show the thumbnail too.
Right. Not sure how to make that better. That's actually a really good point.
And that's actually sometimes the issue, is that we do the preview and then we reconsider everything going to the next screen.
I mean, on the preview page, there might be a way to say this document is too large to preview, which is not ideal, but
well, we have to show them
that screen.
Because we have to show them the preview. I don't think because like the preview screen shows like serves as this is what you're signing on your form. I don't think we can just not show them a preview. We can not show them the thumbnail and make them click the link or whatever, but then that still adds like here's a background waiting task for it.
We could do a button that says this preview, or we could do a previous page saying this document is going to take approximately X long to generate.
I don't think we can't say how long it's going to take to generate, really, but
okay.
Bryce, I'm going to send you an invitation to a meeting that I realized I probably can't join. I wonder if David can join, but someone from our lab should be there. It's like the Sally API meeting.
Oh, okay.
It's happening in 3 minutes. But it's like, actually, I really can't do that because I have to do some more class prep first.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, what do we think about like waiting to create the document till people click the link versus not showing them the final screen until everything is downloaded? That's one choice we might need to make, I guess. Maybe we have to just test it, but we don't have any ideas
I
about
mean,
that.
other than that, it seems like it wouldn't work for the preview screen. That seems reasonable. Unless, I mean, if the person's doing this form for the millionth time or something, they're just gonna go click the download link right away, but if the document is taking like 5 minutes to load, then I'm not sure that background task is enough, but which is
Okay.
when
So if
this
it starts
would be,
taking
which is
5
when
minutes
this
to
would
load,
be useful. Right.
What's that?
This is useful when this takes so long that it's going over the budget that whoever it is has given it, right? The
Yeah.
time budget. So if it's taking that long anyway, they'll probably click the link before it's done being generated, if that's a concern.
Well, I think one thing is you only can click one link at a time. So
I thought we were concerned about one big document, but okay.
yeah, one big document is still probably you're right. But my point is, like, if there's a list of documents, you at least get the extra time. Like, I don't know how to combine starting the background assembly, letting it be refreshed every time someone hits the refresh button on the browser, which doesn't really necessarily send a really clear signal to DocAssemble. And yeah, it just feels like kind of a mess. Like, I don't really know how to untangle it yet, but okay. I guess we could just try this is not a bad idea, just to try it and see what people feel, how it feels and how the speed seems to be and what the UX seems to be. I think that's the best first place to start.
Yeah, I guess I agree. It's the easier thing to do. I think it will not be optimal in terms of UI, but we should get it up first.
There might, I mean, I might, if I have the wherewithal, try and look for like existing things people have done for this kind of problem, because this has got to be a common problem.
It's a common problem for a handful of
uses, for sure. But
Ada JAuthor probably does something similar, but they have a completely separate server to merge, like actually make the documents, don't they? So they've already done the background waiting task version, I assume, because it's already a completely separate server that they have to reach out to.
Well, it might not be literally a different server. I think it just runs on IIS, but
it's a different process. It's not something. The assembly is not happening on the like process that is generating the next screen to be shown to the user, which is the core issue here of
Good
that.
point.
Like, yeah,
because that is the problem. You're right. If we knew it was a separate task, then there's different kinds of interfaces you can give people in a more deterministic way. It would be very nice to not have to change old interviews. I would really like that, but it may not be possible. I mean, the truth is there probably are a small number of people with forms that they know the interviews that have 7 files, and therefore they know that it won't be, it's causing an error, and they know they have to go in and fix it. So that might work, but okay. Well, all right.
hard problem.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else we can talk about it now, and we've hit time. But, all right.
I mean, yeah, the author might be able to make a previous screen that says this document is large or medium or small or whatever. They might be able to make a screen previously that says it's going to take a while.
Workday does this. So like a lot of systems do just say, hey, you're asking to create a document. We're going to assume that's a background process, and we'll let you know when it's ready. I mean, Workday's not necessarily has the best UI, but
I was going to say, I feel like this is whatever we end up doing will be better than like, oh, we'll email it to you, which is my least favorite part of the background process thing. But like, yeah, they all assume it's background processes mostly. And most servers would operate like, at least most JavaScript front-end things would operate like, oh, we need to wait for the server to do stuff anyway, whereas DocAssemble is very heavily coupled from like this is the logic of the interview, and this is what we're doing. So
Yeah, like we're not right, because it's basically in something like React, you'd be sending a signal. Okay, we have to wait till it's done.
yes, yeah,
Yeah, which that's another option, right? Like maybe we could still do that because you do have the ability to do like Ajax async, remote calls.
Well, how is that? I don't think that's any different than the like start the background processes and then here's a link that if it's completed takes you to the screen where you downloaded it, and if it's or to download it, and if it's not completed takes you to the waiting screen until it's ready. That feels like the doc assembly way of doing it, right? Like, would we use Ajax?
The only reason I could think of it is like it feels like the separate screen is like really disruptive for people, but that's a nuance that we would probably figure out how to resolve.
Has the meeting started for y'all? Or just you
Yeah,
said
but
3 minutes.
it's a giant
Yes,
meeting,
yeah.
so it's
Oh,
probably
it's
okay.
a giant meeting. Okay.
Still would be good for one of us to be there. I'm guessing David might not.
I will join soon.
Okay.
Whatever response.
I still think it's worth like that. You just said generate a link, and if the link is ready, immediately download. If it's not, show a waiting screen.
Yeah, and I think by immediate download that might mean, in my mind, that might mean here's a screen with like the thumbnail preview that you still have to click through. It's one more click, but it's much more not resilient, but like.
Yeah, having it be a different thing that happens at different times, click the link would be probably really hard for you to test kill, right?
Yeah.
But what about like if it popped up a modal and said, hey, we're generating your document, please wait, if it wasn't ready. And then if it was, when it finished, it would download right away. Wouldn't that be better for the user? They don't have to go to another screen.
Maybe, but like, okay, if in that case, it would be you click the link, it says modal pops up, we're ready. They have to then wait for a little bit and click it again to download. I feel like it would be better if you click it once and then it's a new screen that says here's the like spinning circle download thing, and then when that's ready, that will auto refresh and go to here's your thumbnail and here's your thing to download. It could, I guess, actually you can just send people directly to PDFs in DocAssemble. Right. I forget that you can do that. Okay, that would work fine too, but I do think there needs to be the intermediate screen. I don't know if the modal would make sense because you'd have to click on it again, right?
Let me just think. So if you're in let's say you're in Google Drive and you want to download a folder. I think this might be good to look at the examples to see like what we want to do. About download the whole folder. It says preparing download. Zipping one file zipped, and then it's just downloads. So it shows me that something's happening, and then the thing just downloads for me. That's kind of the experience I was thinking about.
If we can do that in DocAssemble, that would be fine. I'm just afraid that like all of the examples that are in the world are going to be like this is a 90% JavaScript app, and that's how it works anyway. Whereas I don't know if there's an easy way to do that in DocAssemble without re-implementing a whole bunch of JavaScript that none of, I guess Michelle is, I'd say, the only person here an expert in JavaScript, especially on the browser side. So like I'm hesitant to be like, I agree that's maybe what the UI of that people would expect and probably use best, but I don't quite know if we have the expertise to do that if that's the case.
Okay.
But maybe it just ends up being we try it anyway. Like that's the agile thing.
That's true. See. I'm just trying to see what happens if you try to select more than one thing. So this is like a progress dialog, but it only ever shows one thing happening and on Google Drive. And it's like a drawer that pops up from the bottom and then it disappears when it's finished. I mean, I like a lot of things about that. But I mean, I think something we could do is predict, okay, we have to start the background assembly when someone goes to the screen. We know that should trigger it.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard, and that's the, if we can get that in, that would be great. And a lot of this other stuff would be UX polish. That would be nice, but I don't think it's breaking to have people. And I don't think it's like critical to have people take away one extra click and they have to navigate a few more other screens, unless it ends up like re-triggering the, like if they have to go back 2 screens to then go to the same thing, they'd have to re-trigger the download process, which would blow up our server CPU probably.
Yeah. Okay.
An idea.
All right. Well, still not sure where to start, but at least we have some, I think this was still some good extra discussion. Okay. I know there's other examples. I think that's a good idea, Michelle, to like try to fill that in a little bit with examples. Right. Okay, I think that's it. Right. Talk to everybody later.